Hey there, and welcome to our deep dive into a topic you chose, the impact of smartphones and social media on teen mental health. We've got a really interesting mix of sources here.
Oh.
Interviews with experts, parents, even teens themselves, plus some hard-hitting data.
Yeah.
By the end of this, you'll have a clear picture of this complex relationship
Right.
between teens, tech, and well-being.
Yeah.
Enough to draw your own conclusions.
It's a timely topic.
Yeah.
And the sources you've gathered really highlight the urgency.
Okay, let's jump right in.
Yes.
One thing that really struck me was the data on teen depression rates. They've been going up, especially for girls, since around 2012.
Yeah.
Almost like clockwork.
That's right around when smartphone use exploded.
Yeah.
And now studies are showing some pretty alarming connections.
Oh, wow.
For example, there's research indicating a 30% increase in depression among teens who are on social media for more than 3 hours a day.
Oh, wow, 30%. That's huge. It makes you wonder, is it just a coincidence? Or is there something more going on?
What's fascinating is that it's not just correlation we're seeing.
Right.
Experimental data is starting to back up a causal link between increased social media use and negative mental health outcomes.
So it's not just that these things happen at the same time. There's actually evidence suggesting that one might be causing the other.
Right.
That's pretty concerning.
It is.
Yeah.
And this isn't just theoretical.
Uh-huh.
One of the sources you shared, a principal named Shane Voss, implemented a phone ban at his school.
Right.
And noticed a decrease in anxiety and better focus among the students.
That's incredible. I remember reading that.
Yeah.
He heads up Mount Middle School in Colorado, right?
Yes. It really makes you wonder what a digital detox, even for a day, could do for all of us.
Right. As you were describing that study, I caught myself thinking, maybe I should try that too.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see a link between increased smartphone and social media use and some negative mental health trends. But what's actually behind this? What are the mechanisms at play here?
It's multifaceted, for sure.
Okay.
Sleep disruption is a big one. The blue light emitted from screens messes with our melatonin production,
Yeah.
which is key for regulating sleep cycles.
And then you've got the just one more scroll phenomenon. I
Yeah.
know I'm guilty of that.
Exactly.
Late night scrolling just throws those sleep rhythms totally out of whack.
Exactly. And lack of sleep can impact mood, concentration, even physical health.
Wow.
And for teens whose brains are still developing, they need even more sleep than adults do.
It makes sense that sleep would be a major factor.
Uh-huh.
What other concerns are experts highlighting?
Social comparison is another big one.
Okay.
Especially with platforms like Instagram. There's this pressure to present a flawless, curated image,
Right.
which can leave anyone feeling inadequate.
Yeah.
But particularly teens who are already figuring out their identity.
That resonates with me. I think even as adults, we struggle with that sometimes. I'm curious, though, do boys and girls experience this pressure differently?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The sources you've collected point to a pretty fascinating divide in how boys and girls engage with the digital world and the different risks they face.
I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
But first, I have to admit, all this talk about sleep and social comparison is making me a little anxious.
Oh, no.
Maybe I should put my phone down for a bit.
Well, imagine how amplified those feelings must be for teenagers whose brains are still developing.
Okay, point taken back to the topic at hand. You mentioned that boys and girls experience these online traps differently. Can you tell us more about that?
It seems like boys are often drawn to the online world for competition and mastery. Think about video games, for example. They offer that clear sense of achievement within a structured system.
Yeah.
Level up beat, the high score, that sort of thing.
That makes sense. And we all know how easy it is to get sucked into the world of video games.
Uh-huh.
But is that really a bad thing? Don't games teach problem-solving skills and strategy?
They certainly can.
Okay.
But the problem is when those activities dominate a young person's time and attention to the detriment of developing other essential social skills.
So it's about balance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the sources you've shared highlight another potential trap for boys.
Oh.
The readily accessible world of online pornography.
That's a tough one. It feels like a conversation parents and educators are really struggling to have.
It is, and it's something we need to be talking about more openly.
Right.
Because there are concerns that early and frequent exposure to pornography can actually hinder the development of healthy sexual attitudes and relationships.
So for boys, it's less about the curated perfection of social media and more about getting hooked on systems and stimulation.
That seems to be the general trend. Girls, on the other hand, are often more drawn to the social and emotional aspects of the online world.
Okay.
They're more likely to get caught up in the curated perfection of Instagram, the constant social drama, and the anxieties of social status.
It's interesting because that really aligns with some of the stories we've heard from teen girls in these sources. Remember Kate Glavin?
Yes, her story is a powerful example of how social media can amplify the pressures and anxieties of adolescence.
For those who haven't heard it, Kate went viral on TikTok after sharing a story about a guy she was dating who turned out to be, well, not so great. She hadn't even revealed his name.
Oh, wow.
But the internet did what the internet does, and his picture and information were everywhere. Kate said the whole experience left her feeling incredibly exposed and vulnerable.
That highlights another risk, the speed and scale at which information and judgment can spread online.
Right.
For teens who are already navigating a complex social landscape,
Yeah.
that can be incredibly overwhelming.
It's almost like the entire world is watching and judging your every move.
And because girls are often more sensitive to social dynamics and feedback, those judgments can really sting.
Yeah. So we've got boys potentially getting hooked on systems and stimulation, and girls getting trapped in a cycle of social comparison and drama. And all of this is happening while their brains are still developing.
It's important to remember that these are just general trends, of course.
Right.
There are always exceptions. But understanding these patterns can help us have more informed conversations about how to support teens in navigating the digital world.
You know, as we're talking about all this, I keep thinking about the dopamine reinforcement system you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind us what that is and how it plays into all of this?
Absolutely. The dopamine reinforcement system is basically our brain's reward pathway.
Okay.
When we do something pleasurable, our brain releases dopamine, which makes us feel good and motivates us to repeat that behavior.
So in the context of social media, that could be anything from getting a like on a post to seeing a notification pop up on our screen.
Exactly. And the thing about social media is that it's designed to trigger these dopamine hits constantly. It's like a slot machine in your pocket, always offering the chance for a little reward.
Which makes it incredibly hard to resist. I know I struggle with that myself. I'll be trying to focus on work, but then my phone buzzes and I just have to check it.
It's a very human response.
Yeah.
But for teens whose brains are still developing and more susceptible to these kinds of rewards, it can be even harder to resist that pull.
It's almost like they're constantly being bombarded with distractions.
Imagine a world where you have a TV, a video game, and a guitar all vying for your attention at once.
Wow.
That's kind of what it's like for teens with smartphones.
I hadn't thought about it that way. That's a powerful image. Okay, so this is all starting to sound a little bleak, but the good news is that there are things we can do about it, right?
Absolutely. It's not too late to course correct. One of the most compelling solutions I came across in your sources is a set of steps outlined by Jonathan Haidt,
Okay.
a social psychologist who's done a lot of research in this area.
I'm familiar with his work. He advocates for a more cautious approach to technology, especially for young people.
Right.
What are some of the steps he recommends?
Well, they might not be magic bullets, but they're certainly thought-provoking.
Okay.
The first one is surprisingly simple. No smartphones before high school.
Delaying the inevitable. I can already hear the groans from middle schoolers everywhere, but I see the logic there.
It's all about giving kids time to develop those essential social and emotional skills without the constant distraction of a smartphone. Those pre-teen years are crucial for building a solid foundation.
So instead of being glued to a screen, they're out playing tag, having face-to-face conversations, maybe even getting into a little good old-fashioned trouble.
Precisely, they can still connect with their friends and family through other means. Think flip phones, landlines, those relics of the past.
Okay, so no smartphones until high school. What's the next step?
No social media till 16.
Duh.
The idea is that by this age, their brains are a bit more developed, better equipped to handle the pressures and potential pitfalls of those platforms.
Makes sense. Even as adults, it's easy to get sucked into the comparison game or feel overwhelmed by the constant stream of information. I can only imagine how much harder it is for teenagers to navigate that.
It's a lot to handle for sure. And even once they hit 16, open and honest conversations about responsible social media use are crucial.
Right. Teaching them to be mindful of their time online, to recognize the curated perfection they're seeing, and to prioritize real-world connections.
Exactly. Now, the third step might ruffle a few feathers, but
Okay.
Haidt suggests phone-free schools.
Oh, wow. Going all in. But imagine a classroom where everyone is fully present, engaged in the lesson, not sneaking peeks at their phones under the desk. Kind of a beautiful thought, actually.
It is. Schools have a responsibility to create environments that are truly conducive to learning. Removing the temptation of smartphones could go a long way in helping students focus, reducing anxiety, and fostering more meaningful interactions.
I'm starting to warm up to this idea. Okay, what's the final step?
This one focuses on getting back to basics, encouraging independence and free play in the real world.
Getting those kids out from behind the screens and into the sunshine.
Exactly. Think tree climbing, bike riding, building forts, engaging in imaginative play with their friends, activities that build social skills, resilience, and a sense of adventure.
It's about fostering a love for the real world. Real experiences, real connections. It almost feels like we've lost sight of that in our hyper-connected world.
That's precisely what hate is trying to bring attention to. These steps are not about demonizing technology altogether. It's about finding a healthier balance, especially for young people whose brains are still developing.
So let's recap. We've talked about the concerning rise in teen depression rates coinciding with the boom in smartphone use. We've explored some of the potential mechanisms at play: sleep disruption, social comparison, the addictive nature of social media, and how boys and girls may experience these challenges differently.
And we've discussed some potential solutions, including hate's 4 steps for reclaiming childhood from the grip of smartphones.
It's a lot to digest, but I think the key takeaway here is that while technology offers incredible benefits, it also presents some very real risks, especially for teenagers. And as adults, it's our responsibility to help them navigate this complex landscape.
It's a conversation we need to be having, not just with our kids, but with our communities, our schools, our policymakers. The decisions we make today will shape the future for the next generation.
You know, this deep dive has really made me think about my own relationship with technology. Maybe it's time for a digital detox for all of us.
I think that's an excellent idea. We could all benefit from a little less screen time and a little more real-world connection.
I couldn't agree more. Well, this has been a fascinating and thought-provoking deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, but this is just the beginning of the conversation. So listeners, we leave you with this. How will you take action to create a healthier digital future for yourselves and for the next generation? Thanks for joining us. Till next time.